I heard you talk about a story where you're about to go over to the Euphrates, going into Baghdad. This is like '03.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
about you're in the Hummer, and the corporal says, "We're just gonna go fast because the Iraqis, their weaponry's not too good, so they're not gonna, they probably won't hit us." And then that Hummer breaks down. I can't even imagine having to go through that and then
Yeah.
having to be a television personality.
Well,
How do you process someone saying that? Do you really think about someone saying we're gonna blast through this gunfire, or do you just kind of black it out and say I have a job to do? I can't really be thinking about that.
so that was 20 years ago. 20 years ago this month, actually. And I will say that it's an entirely unique experience. It's not like it's happened. I mean, I've had other situations where you're like, in some sort of threatening environment. We were in Afghanistan, right after 9/11, before the American troops were there, and that was a little hairy. But the trip over the bridge in Iraq was, sort of unique in terms of the Humvee then breaking down and thinking to yourself, wow, this isn't sort of how I envisioned this all going. So different people react. The driver, who was a brilliant CBS cameraman for years, a combat cameraman named Mario Di Carvalho, who had been in the Portuguese Special Forces and was very, very used to dealing with situations. He had covered really bad. He'd been in bad places. And he knew how to handle himself. I did not have that sort of experience, so I reacted in a way of, I was in the fetal in the back seat, wondering if, my wife was 7 months pregnant at home, and like, all of a sudden it's like, maybe I should have thought about this before I put my hand up for this assignment. Like all kinds of stuff goes through your mind. I mean, yes, it's easy in some cases to then, I mean, I had to do the story at the end of the day, but I guess my answer to your question is, know why you're doing what you're doing, in any career. Know what you're doing, know what the consequences could be, and you should always be aware of sort of what the possibilities are. People, that was a traumatic event. I'm not going to sit here and be like, I shook it off and went on with. No, it took a piece out of me for years. Like, I'm not some kind of tough guy. I don't come from a long line of brave people. Like, it scared the hell out of me. And it had consequences that I had to work through for a long time after that. So, there are different people. Again, know what your know what your goals are, know what your dreams are, know what the prices you're willing to pay, know what you're not willing to do. Again, it's the exercise that runs in a parallel track to other questions in your life. Professionally, there's this: what do you want to do? What are your limits? What are your goals? What are your dreams? But there's a personal component to that too.
Were you going
And you should always be asking yourself, both professionally and personally, like, where do I want to get to?
were you going back and forth between the States and Iraq, or were you just there for one stint and then you came back?
Yeah, so we went in February before the war started. We went out to Kuwait, hung out for a while, sort of waiting. Then we went out a couple weeks before to prepare, and then we went and covered the invasion over the berm. I was with the Third Infantry Division, the First Brigade. I was embedded with them. Wonderful people. I had never really seen what it was like. Certainly, the technology didn't exist to broadcast live from a battlefield before. It was nuts. And there was no preparation in certain ways. Made some very good friends. Had some amazing, indelible experiences. I went back to Iraq 8 years later in 2011. I was in the last Humvee out of Iraq, for the United States military. So I was in on the invasion, and then I was in the last Humvee out, which was an amazing experience in its own way. Looking out the back, I was with a photographer by the name of Tony Furlow, still works for CBS News, among the most talented photographers of his generation, certainly that you'll ever meet. And I remember we were looking out the back window, and there was just nothing behind us but road. And you also knew, as the last Humvee, kind of had a little target on you if anybody wanted to make a statement. So I felt like we were in a mobile bullseye.
Was there any amount of
As we,
like, PTSD from having such a crazy experience when you were there, 8 years prior?
well, yeah, I didn't think there was or that there would be, but it was I don't want to be look, there are people like Charlie Daggett for CBS News is amazing guy. And he's intrepid. There's all kinds of people. Elizabeth Palmer, she's amazing. She is absolutely as brave as it gets. The London Bureau for CBS News has had so many people that have been just phenomenal producers, correspondents, photographers. There's a guy named Andy Stevenson who's just photographer, started as sound guy. He's as brave as it gets. I'm not sure I have that gene. I've done it, but it took a big piece out of me. Again, it's very personal, and different people deal with it in different ways.